right. Hello, everyone. And thank you for attending. I know it's not an easy choice to be here, to choose between free drinks and another talk. The good news, though, is I'm not going to talk about Kafka. Or perhaps a little bit, I don't know. I'm gonna share my experience in implementing event-driven architectures at large organizations, and try to give you an approach how you can do that. I'm an EDA architect. I've been doing that for, let's say, the last 5 years, and I want to share my experience, what works and what doesn't work. So let's kick off. First of all, a little bit on the positioning. What are we talking about? A little word on the business event-driven aspect. It's not the same as event-driven, not really. And how to do that? How can we set up a governance to approach that? Positioning. So that's just a recap. I'm sure you're all aware, but we started from the monolith. Of course, that was a problem, difficult to scale, not really flexible. So we reacted to that monolith with a service-oriented approach. That was a good step in a good direction, service-oriented architecture, but still point-to-point integration. So also difficult to scale, heavy interdependencies, and so on. So we reacted to that with a kind of enterprise service bus approach. Let's say abstracting the integration, putting everything, let's say, in the middle and centralizing the integration logic. Also a good step in the right direction, but still the ESB part, or whatever you call it, was difficult to maintain, and the teams got tend to be a bottleneck for change. And a natural reaction actually is event-driven architecture. It's just a natural evolution within our architectural landscape. It will certainly be not the last one, but okay, that's where we are. We don't have any central logic anymore. There's no central integration team, so that's a good thing. We persist the communication, and it gets scalable by nature, and we duplicate that let's say integration data. Yeah, that's a natural reaction. So it's very difficult. You've been listening today to a lot of talks talking about Kafka, a lot of streaming, a lot of technical partitioning, watermarking. This is a total different thing. It's about how to use events from a business point of view. So I want to let's say try to clear your mind, have an open mind, and I'm not saying try to forget everything that you heard, that you hear today, but just for one moment. So what's business event driven? It's so an event is and is not a message, and so an event is clearly something that happened in the past. It's not a command, and a business event is also it's an event, but it's we say it has a semantically business valuable meaning, and I'm going to explain how you can recognize it. Perhaps an example. This is an example of a very simple BPMN structure to register a claim. So it's just a flow, a business process flow to register a claim, check if it's fraudulent, see if we're going to pay it or not. We have a claim, accept it. And finally, we're going to introduce the result to the customer. So if you think about a simple process, it's very easy and natural to add what we call business events to that. For example, we have that claim rejected or a claim accepted. We have a settlement created. We have a settlement paid. Things like that. Very natural, understandable things. You could even just strip the BPMN process and just express it with business events. So that's the same story. It's the same flow. It's just expressed with the names of the events. So we're not talking about payloads or formats. It's the name of the event that is very important. But that's all fair and well. But in large organizations, we have like this. It's just chaos. We have so much. We have so much ETLs. We have so much data sources. We have so much teams. We have so much responsibilities, initiatives, programs running, and so on and so on. So how can we, let's say, shift the minds from, let's say, more batch-oriented way of thinking to that way to express or starting to express business events? Because if you think about it, that business event language has a lot of advantages. And so I can talk a whole day about the value of it, but just to name one, it brings the business language together with the technical people. And so for the first time, we start understanding each other. So it's very worthwhile to try to, let's say, in a chaotic world, to introduce that, and how can we do that? But first of all, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the most, let's say, the most evil thing in architecture? Has anyone an answer? No. Say again? Forward thinking, yeah, that's also not a good thing. What we try to not do is coupling. Coupling has been a problem from day one. We need to be integrated, we need to be coupled, but we want to be loosely coupled. But from day one, it has been there all along. So not to mention hardware in the first beginning, just your machine that you put things on is a tight coupling. Everything that you put on one machine is a tight coupling. Operating systems, central databases. So we try to solve that with a lot of different tooling. We try to Dockerize it to abstract the operating system. We invented microservices so that we don't have a central DB anymore. REST APIs is a little bit difficult, so it's still, let's say, one of the main problems that we have, tight coupling. But also there we try to tackle that. But if we, and it was in a couple of talks today also, and so that loosely coupling is actually one of the big advantages of event streaming. It's, of course, it's real time that you get for free, but the fact that we get loosely coupled by event-driven architecture is amazing. So why is that? Yeah, I'm not going to deep dive into that, but we all know Kafka. Okay, sorry, I didn't want to drop the name, but we have an event log, we have a key value, we have events, we have a producer producing events, it's a log of events, it has a key and a value, and so on and so on. And we have those partitions, and we are able to put those business events on those partitions, and that's important. We are able to, let's say, to produce the behavior of a certain something onto one partition by using the same key. If you want to tell something about that claim 1234, we can say it got registered, it was non-fraudulent, we accepted it, and so on. The whole life cycle of that of that claim, we can produce it on one partition by using the same key of that claim, and we have a guaranteed order of that life cycle. From a business point of view, that is extremely valuable. So we got decoupled just because we all know consumers can consume at their own pace, at their own point in time. They can start from the beginning. They can have a short processing time or a longer processing time, doesn't matter. So that decoupling is just getting better and better. So you raise the decoupling bar. You can use it as a single source of truth, and we have no central integration authority, so the event actually becomes the API. There are no contract negotiations between consumer and producer, and that potential of real-time business behavior is something to think about. But we still have this, we still have that chaos. That's not solved yet. And so how can we do that? So we have three things. We have an approach that we use is to define the EDA manifest. That's a kind of event-driven architecture document, let's say, that we set up. We define also the operating model, and we try to elevate and repeat that process. But let me deep dive to that, into that EDA manifest. So you gather, let's say, some early believers, if the event-driven architecture is new to the organization, and you align on that manifest. You build it together. And on that manifest, and that's perhaps the most important slide of this presentation, you actually put very practical things on that manifest. For example, how are we going to name our topics? The topic name convention. Let's agree on that. That's a very practical thing. It's one of the first things that you need before you start producing. What about order? What about schemas? What about retention policies? Things like that, very practical things. You put in a manifest and you start a discussion within the organization to define that. And that's actually the secret into opening a discussion that is much more larger than just those practical things. Let me explain that. Topic naming conventions. First of all, you could say, okay, we're going to use business events, and you can explain the difference between business events, application events, logging events. But what is a business event? And to come back on that, so it's something that we broadcast about an action that happened in the past. For example, machine produced. So it happened in the past, the machine was produced. We tell something about something or someone. It happens to something or someone. The service engineer got hired. Well, it's the service engineer that got hired, not something else. It has a verb in the past tense and a subject. So machine commissioned, so the commissioned is the verb, and the subject is the machine in this case. In general, the subject has an immutable character. For example, a bad business event would be object updated. That's also kind of event name, but it doesn't tell you anything. And it's very difficult to know what object updated would mean. Object could be anything. Updated is even worse. That's also a verb in the past tense, but it just is not explicit. A warranty expired, a machine commissioned, a service engineer. Well, those subjects, that warranty, that machine is immutable. It's not going to change normally. And like I showed you, that it's very easy to add those business events into an existing business process. So And it gets produced by the owner of the subject. And so you can imagine that those events, for example, a machine produced, belongs in some domain. There's a kind of responsible for that event being produced. So it has a clear owner. Also something that, if you start to manifest, very interesting to explain is that there's a difference between what we call capability behavior versus a domain model. We are brainwashed that we only think about domain models today. We do extractions, we have databases, we extract it, we build data products, whatever we do, but we always think in, let's say, a mindset that we think about a domain model. What is the domain model of ordering? What is the domain model of inventory? If someone watched the previous presentation, Alan or Adam talked about data on the outside versus data on the inside. And so normally we talk about data on the inside. So let's take an example. If we have that machine commissioned, for example, and we make that a business event and we give it some properties like a machine identifier, customer side, was the competition spotted during the delivery of that machine, and so on. That's a business event. That's something that happened in the past. And it serves different domains. So inventory could be interested because machine is just delivered, so inventory drops. Service could be interested because that machine will need to be serviced. Marketing could be interested for that Boolean if the competition was spotted, and so on, and so on. So we call that machine commission, that event, that's the event, that's the reality, it happens in real time. We call it data in motion versus the materialized domains that use that event for their own purpose. So it's sourced from reality, that data gets from in motion at rest, and it's shaped for a certain purpose. So the domain model for let's say, order administration will be totally different than the machine learning model that wants to predict, I don't know, machine services. So if we look at these events related to machines, machine commissioned, upgraded, located, these are just examples. We could say this is behavior of the machine. It's also perhaps machine behavior that is owned by a kind of domain, or let's say business unit within your organization. So there's probably a unit that is responsible for those events. Like I said, it's data on the outside, and that we call it a business event. So that machine commission, we call that the event type. The machine, like I said, is the event subject. The commission, the event action. You could call aftermarket service, in this case, a capability. And so we group those business events on capability subject level. So in this case, the machine is the subject level. So we group all the events that are related to that machine to that subject level. Like, let's take it a step further. So if you have machine commissions, it's related to machine, but for example, tasks or contracts or whatever, we call that the subjects, and they are related to a certain capability, and that capability, let's say, is related to a kind of tree of capabilities. And if you think about your organization, you probably will recognize that. It's a kind of organizational structure, but it touches upon, let's say, many things, of course. We started, remember, we just asked the question, how would we call our topic name? And we already ended up here touching, crucial fundamental questions, how you want to organize your organization. And data governance, of course, is an important player in that field. So get them involved if possible. Let's get back to that topic. Okay, we produce those events within that topic. We have that machine. It's owned by service, aftermarket service machine. Perhaps that business unit comes into place. We have, of course, a kind of postfix that says events. Let's agree that if that topic is called with the postfix events, that this topic contains business events, just an alignment. Of course, we need to version in it because topic breaking changes can happen. That's just a total different area. That's a different talk. But we need to version your topics. That's really a good idea. Also, you could have a prefix indicating what environment are you referring to if you have multiple environments on one cluster. So you see that parts of that topic name are related to that capability structure, and that's the data governance thing. And the subject is more, let's say, a domain information architecture thing. So that topic name opens up a whole wide discussion and very interesting to let's say, to align on that. But why do we need to group those business events? Is that actually needed? If you think about that, there are a couple of things that certainly drive to group them. First of all, security. It's totally logic if you want to apply ACLs on your topic names, that you have the ability to, let's say, to filter on environment, capability, or the subject. Also simplicity. Everyone benefits from a clear structure. You define an enterprise standard. You want to have it self-serviced. It's also kind of domain-driven thing. We all know that domain-driven approach is a very good approach to handle complexity. So large organizations have an enormous complex landscape. So it's certainly a good thing to make an alignment on the clear structure, how you want to group your events. And last but not least, causality. So if we group those events, we create that life cycle of that subject, of that machine. So to know that something causes something else is of enormous value for the business. And so if you just think digital twin, business behavior, you want to build a digital twin of your business, that's what you're going to need. Okay, that's just one item on the manifest topic naming convention, and we already see that we have a lot to talk about. Ordering, for example, is another element. Not going to dive too deep here, but important to know is that key selection is, let's say, is something to think about. So the producer produces with that key, or can produce with a key, and it's important to think which key are you going to use, because that key defines that partition assignment, and that partition assignment is the one that guarantees your order. If you produce with that claim identifier, you know that all the things that happen to that claim 1, 2, 3, 4 will end up on the same partition and will have a clear ordering. So it defines the life cycle of the subject. Will you use schemas or not? So most people use schemas for the payload. A lot of people don't use it for the key, because it's a kind of overhead. A key is mostly very simple. Could be just a string in that example claim identifier. the key schema would be very, very, very simple, which would just say, okay, claim identifier, type varchar or string or whatever format that you're using. But I do advise to use it on keys, because it's a kind of communication to your producer saying, I want you to produce with a claim identifier. And it's of course, yeah, you can work around that, but I would certainly advise it. It's also these things, when you talk about that manifest and discuss the points on that manifest, the output, the results, topic naming convention, will you use key schemas or not? These are all things that are important for your operating model, of course. Use schemas and write. Probably you all know that's a good way to approach it. Make sure that your schema is tied together with your payload and your key, so that the consumer is always able to parse that. It also enforces a clear company vocabulary, so that ubiquitous language you are creating, that business event is just, let's say, expressing things in a very natural way. The language that is used is understandable by everyone in the company. You are moving that supplier technology language away, and you put the power back to the organization. And so schemas are very important to enforce that. And for schema validation, of course, otherwise it has no use. Think about retention. How long will you retain your events? Align on the single source of truth. Or are we going to use Kafka as a system of records, or are we going to, let's say, stream it into Databricks and have our source of truth over there? Position your near-time real data products. Yeah. Where are you going to position your real-time data products? Something that you need to think about, and also it's a good time to define within your organization what is your data product. There's a lot of talk in town related to data products, but yeah, everyone has a different definition of that. Okay, it needs to be governed, it needs to be self-explanatory, it needs to be self-serviced, and so on and so on. But for example, the scope of a data product, no one talks about the scope of a data product. How big or how small is a data product? That depends. It's up to the organization to define that. A good question to ask yourself is a business event itself, is that a data product? Perhaps that's the smallest data product in the landscape. Could be yes or no, but it's certainly worthwhile to spin up the discussion within your organization. Try to retain, so the time that you retain your events on the broker. There's also a lot of discussion I experience, and so there are a lot of architects that, yeah, we're not going to keep those events forever on the broker. That's going to cost us a lot of money, and even there's tiered storage and so on. That's actually a discussion that is, or let's say that you can avoid by just, let's agree that we will retain them until we throw them away. Events, we can easily throw away events. Just change your retention policy and your events will disappear automatically. Set them to infinitive, and if it's a problem, then you can just say, okay, we're gonna, after 1 year or 2 years, you're just gonna say, okay, let's delete, let's set our retention policy on 2 years, for example. Much easier than trying to get your deleted events back. So use the manifest to align, to also apply the results of your manifest to your first proof of concept or pilot projects or whatever you do. And try to spin that up in parallel. It's no use to spend 6 months on a manifest and then do something, try to do something as soon as possible, but feed the outcome of your manifest, like topic naming convention, for example, as soon as possible into your reality, and drive that manifest to, let's say, to evangelize the mindset and the real-time event-driven approach into your organization. You will see that because you're building it up from very practical, let's say, or the need to have a practical decision on a topic name, that you will have the power to let's say, broadcast that within the organization. So what about the operating model? Also very important to think about that. So we can design events. We need to publish events. We have applications that get developed, deployed, and so on. We have also that event observability. We need some kind of architecture to manage that. Just don't start out of the blue. It's not possible within large organizations without any reference architecture. This is just an example, and I'm not going to double click on that, but if you look at the columns, we have the design piece. Okay, how you're going to set up design, review process, and so on. Get that in place, get the versioning in place. You need to publish it. What about topic provisioning? What about schema registration? Things like that. Your engineering teams need to know, they need to have kind of extra skill set to build applications, let's say, to know that if they produce events that they need to produce with that key that was designed. You have the whole DevOps thing. Also the operation, how is that looking like? And last but not least, observability. So we have within event-driven architecture, there's a kind of capability roadmap. Event visibility, for example, is one of the first things that you need to put in place. Make sure that you find your events. It seems very simplistic, but try to find an event on a Kafka broker. Yeah, good luck. If you want to spin up a consumer for every topic and search for, was this event produced on this topic? Yeah, that's just not workable. So stream all your events into a searchable something, an Elasticsearch or Pinot or whatever, and make sure that your events are easily discoverable. Your engineering teams will thank you, and also your service desk. So spin that up. Make sure that these pillars get owned, get executed, and and start. So. Of course, you're not going to get there from the beginning. So it's just an awareness that you need to start something and somewhere, but that you have kind of elevation roadmap to go. So once you have event visibility, then you have events exploration, so that you can see that life cycle of that event. That would be very interesting to have that on the timeline. And so on. So you have capability that need to be in place from the beginning, and then you can have things like event analysis, event catalogs. You can start with just a very simple event catalog if it's on Confluent or whatever, just a manual something. But eventually we need to move to something more automated, publish your event repository to Colibra or something like that. Have a clear ownership of those work packages, I would say. So make the organization clear that we need the resources and the budget to put that into the organization. It's just not spinning up a cluster and choosing the streaming tech stack. No, it has a lot of more meat to the bone. If you are running use cases, first projects, have a clear owner for those. Who is going to define that operating model? Who is going to lead the EDA manifesto sessions? Who is responsible for that vocabulary? Is data governance in the picture? How are we going to call that service engineer? Is it a service engineer? Is it a, I don't know, a worker? How the vocabulary? You need some let's say ownership and a clear way to go to. Your engineering guidelines, spin that up so that, I don't know, assess your engineering skill set and try to see where the gap is. Do they need to learn Kafka streams? Do they need to learn Flink? Do they need to have kind of extra guidelines for that? Also, let me look at the time, 8 minutes. Should work. Involve solution architecture. If you get into the space of real-time events, it has an enormous impact on your solution architecture. It's something that is not very often touched, but designing a solution before you are in the event-driven world and after the event-driven world is a totally different thing. You can have a much better solution design once you have, let's say, the feeling of event-driven. Get those solution architects in there, involve them. It has no sense to have an event, let's say, or your business behavior expressed with business events if your solution architects are not able to work with that. That capability roadmap makes sure that it has also an owner and accountability, someone to make sure that event visibility, exploration, that these capabilities get to life. So that's my experience that I want to share. I would say one important thing is that the fact that you're here in this conference means that you know that event-driven architecture is really here to stay. I would even say that organizations that are not able to put that event-driven architecture at the core of the organization, will fail, or let's say will not be able to keep up with changing reality, at least. So it's crucial that for a large organization that event-driven architecture is not kind of sidetracked to just try something and spin up a Kafka cluster or whatever and try to play with certain things. It's important to move that notion of, or that awareness that we need to put it in the core of our enterprise architecture and start doing that, starting that shift, because it takes time, of course. So if I could wish you one takeaway, think about that in your own organization, how you are able to do that. So that's my talk. We have even 5 minutes for questions.